So, hi everyone, and welcome to today's session. And thanks for joining us here for the webinar on reclaiming your time. My name is Tim McCarthy, and I'm one of the directors here at Sage Business Group, and I'll be your co-presenter today. So, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to reclaim your time, and Michael will talk about that a little bit later on how important that is. Just for those who are using Zoom, I think we're probably all really familiar or sick of Zoom by this stage. But for those of you not used to it at all, just a couple of tips. Audio settings are here if you need to adjust at all or select your speakers or test any noise. The Q&A button is there if you want to ask any questions. We're happy to answer those on the way through, and perhaps even at the end, if we don't get to them on the way through, we'll answer those. And we always hope that no one needs to click this button, but there is a leave meeting button. So I click that and disappear. But let's hope that doesn't happen over the next, say, 45 minutes running through this session. I'd like to start by introducing Michael Osborne to you today, today's key presenter. Michael is my fellow director here at Sage Business Group, but more importantly for today's presentation, Michael's the CEO. And it's really important, you'll see when we talk about 10 hats later on, about having a clear leader. And that's what Michael is for our business. In that role, Michael's overseen the transformation of our business over the last 12 years and will keep changing, because one thing's for sure, change is the constant. And if you look at today's business compared to 12 years ago, it's almost unrecognisable. And yet we've been able to make these changes whilst on the run. Now, we haven't done it perfectly. We've made a lot of mistakes, and we'll share some of those on the way through. But Michael has led our business from where it was then to where it is now. One of the keys to these changes has been our core values. And one of those is balance, which we define as care and consider for all stakeholders. Now, really importantly in this, we don't refer to work-life balance, because we hear that term all the time, but really, isn't work part of life? So we talk about balance. What is balance? And that's really important in reclaiming your time. Michael's led this charge over the years for us. So time and the use of time is critical to our today's topic, which is reclaiming your time. Time is a constant. Apart from what's about to happen on the weekend, where we're going to skip forward an hour, we're going to lose an hour on the weekend for daylight saving. So time is always the constant. Let's welcome Michael here today, and over to you, Michael, to take us through this session.
Thanks, Tim. And good to be talking to quite a few people today. So, thank you for everyone coming along. In, you know what, the irony is not lost on me that if you're here now, you've already reclaimed some of your time, and perhaps it's the people who aren't here that need to hear these messages a little bit more. But anyway, well done for being here, and as I said, appreciate you making the choice to be here, and we'll endeavour to give you as much value as we can. So let's consider this quote on the screen. Either run the day or it runs you. I imagine there's a few nodding of the heads right now. This reflects a theme for today's content. And in our last session of the 7 ways to grow your business, we looked at the importance of having a roadmap for your business and where you are now in relation to your business serving you and not the other way around. We also looked at, where do you want to be in relation to your business and personally, and from a financial aspect, and what will your business look like? And we looked at the 7 levers that you can use to make change in your business. And hopefully you've had some time to reflect on which ones will impact you the most. So if you've done all that, you may realise that you're going to need some time to implement some of these changes. And I'd imagine the next question was, well, okay, so where do I get this time from? So that's in essence why we developed this webinar, to give people a bit of assistance in relation to that reclaiming of time. Now, as we normally do before we get stuck right into it, just want to throw in our usual disclaimer that the information that we're going to cover in this educational webinar it's general in nature, and it's no substitute for getting advice that is specific to your requirements. Now, this webinar is really a cut down version of what we'd take 90 minutes to 2 hours to go over. So we're only going to scratch the surface of a lot of ideas, but hopefully enough to whet your appetite. Here's what we're going to cover in today's session. We'll discuss why we're always busy, and we'll look at some mindsets that can help us reclaim our time. We'll concentrate quite a bit on mindset, actually. We'll also identify where time is being wasted, potentially, and discuss some practical ways to free up your time. We'll also then have a look at some next steps for yourselves and answer any questions that you may have at the end of this session. So let's have a look at reclaiming your time. So first of all, though, we might look at why we'll always be busy. Now, here are my top 5 reasons. Now, I'm sure there's a hell of a lot more than 5, but these are the ones that resonate, I think, with most people. The first one is that work will expand to the time you have available. Now, what I mean by that is that we often pace our output to match the timeline that we've got for a particular task. Now, guess what? Our team members are doing the same thing. So we have to be very clear on allocating time to not only a team, but ourselves in which to perform a task. Otherwise, we'll just pad it out. Second point there is distractions. I can relate to this. We may have a job that needs finishing, but it lacks a clear deadline. So sometimes, it sits there waiting for a while, then we find ourselves procrastinating, pick up the job, put it down again, all of a sudden something else more important and urgent drops on our desk. So we get onto that and we get distracted. Anyone else relate to that? Because I certainly can. The third point, our perception of busyness changes. It's all relative. For example, back in, some of it's a long time ago, when we were in high school, we might have an hour of homework to do. But you know what? Trying to fit this in around our busy teenage tasks, I suppose, made us feel very busy. And as we progress through maybe uni, trade school, or just straight into the workforce, we experience an increased workload, but we can produce more, but we just have that constant feeling of busyness anyway. So it will adapt to suit that. So the fourth point is perception that busy equals successful. Now, think about it. I mean, how many times if someone says, how are you going, you're busy? I don't know whether if we sat back and said, it's really good. I'm on top of everything. I've got time to do, have a great balance between my personal life and in work, and everything's running smoothly. I'm not quite sure if people would be comfortable saying that. Instead, we go, I'm busy, flat out. I don't think anyone would say I'm bored or I'm struggling to find the time. So we've got that perception that busy equals successful. Maybe it isn't. And the fifth point, being busy is often used as an excuse. When we do have more time, sometimes we don't necessarily do the things we need to do to achieve greater success. And that could be working on our business or reading that book, or these days, listening to that podcast to improve certain aspects. We use being busy as an excuse. So they're the top 5 reasons, but they all point to we choose to work in the way that we do. So we have to make better choices about reclaiming our time. If we wanted to make it a bit more personal, I could turn around by saying, I choose to work in the way I do. So I have to make better choices about how to reclaim my time. Maybe say it that way. So anyway, let's have a look at a couple of mindsets around potentially reclaiming your time. But I think it's really important to get these mindsets right in the first place. The first one I'd like to look at is, it's the 7 habits of highly effective people. Now, this was developed by Stephen Covey. Now, the first habit down on the left-hand side there is to be proactive. Very quickly and simply, being proactive is just you making the choice to improve your life through the things you can influence. Really important. The second point there is to begin with the end in mind. Some of you may have heard that before. I know there's a couple of people on the call that joined us many, many years ago. We ran business camps on the Gold Coast when we were allowed to travel. And we discussed then, beginning with the end in mind, the E-myth by Michael Gerber. Really important. It's you picturing what the end result will look like and then breaking those actions down into milestones and focusing on achieving those milestones. Again, it starts with beginning with the end in mind. And the third point there is to put first things first. Now, that means setting your priorities and focusing on them to avoid wasting time on unimportant and non-urgent tasks. And we'll look at that a bit more when we look at the achiever matrix. Now, these first three habits, they relate to managing and reclaiming your time. And we're going to just be talking about those today. And you can see that the first three are all about managing yourself. Some of you have met our coach, but our coach has always said to us, the speed of the leader equals the speed of the team. But our team will always copy our way of doing things, our habits. So managing ourselves first, the key to reclaiming your time is to control only what you can control. Now, just quick to the other habits that are listed there, thinking win-win, seeking first to understand and then be understood, to synergize and to sharpen the saw. They're really extremely important points, and we could spend another whole webinar just on those, but we won't. We're concentrating on the first three. So taking those first three and then looking at another mindset that you may have actually seen before if you've ever been to one of our sessions. We make hundreds of decisions each day where we have to make a choice as to how we react to a certain situation. Now, being proactive is about staying above the line when we react and focusing on what we can control. And if we want to link that back to the 7 habits, this is talking about being proactive, about being able to make the choice to improve your life through the things you can influence. So when something comes along, and we want to be proactive about it, it's about staying above that line, as I said, focusing on what you can control. Now, as confronting as it may sound, you're choosing to be as busy as you are. More specifically, I suppose, you're choosing to do the things that you're doing. Now, I've got to admit, I'm going to get a little confession to make. I'm sitting here passing on the knowledge that we've gained over the years, but I can't help feeling a little silly because I'm not the world's best at managing my time. Now, I do slip below the line often, and honestly, I reckon most people do. But it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I need to be able to recognize that and move my actions, change my actions to be being back above the line. It's not about how long, it's not about me going below the line, because I will and most people will. It's about how long do I allow myself to stay below the line. But this all-bed model is really, really important. And I know a lot of people have actually used this with their kids. I'm not quite sure how successful they were, but anyway. Now, Stephen Covey's second habit of highly effective people ties into this all-bed concept as well. The habit of starting with the end in mind. It's about, should you want to leave a legacy to your family or business associates, friends? How would you like to people describe your legacy? Would you like to be remembered as someone who, took ownership and was accountable and responsible for the actions and the time they've got, or someone who blamed, made excuses, and denied there was actually an issue in the first place? So that's just something to consider. We're talking very strongly here about mindsets and that you are in control of what you can control. So moving on to another mindset, if you like, it's called the atomic habits. It's a sort of fancy name, but I'm going to try and break it down a little bit. It speaks directly to starting with the end in mind and building some identity-based habits that enable you to better prioritize your time and therefore achieve maybe different and better results. Now, by focusing on who you need to be or your identity and choosing habits consistent with that identity, hopefully your desired outcomes flow more easily from that. Let's go through an example that hopefully might be able to explain it a bit more. And I know this, I can relate to this example. Focusing on your identity. Say you want to be more proactive and focused on what you can control, as I said. but maybe you find yourself distracted at times. So imagine you're sitting there, you've set aside some time to complete some of your business plan or look at your roadmap for your business to make sure you're on track. Or it doesn't matter, whatever the task may be. So you're sitting there and you're working away, all of a sudden an email or a text pops up on your screen or your phone. That is called the cue. You can see there's a message there. You want to read it. So that's that dopamine hit, and it's called a craving. So, no worries. You open up the email or the text, and that's generally the response. You think to yourself, you know what? It's just going to be a short email or text to answer this, and the answer. So you start tapping away, and a few minutes later, bang, hit send. That's the reward you're feeling. Going, okay, great. I'm satisfied if I've been able to answer that query. But guess what? You then keep going on to the next email or the next text and so on. And honestly, most people can relate to that. But what we need to do is remove or replace that cue. What if you could switch off your emails or your phone notifications while you're working on your business? The cue could then be, say, a handwritten list of your action plans coming out of your business plan, created that day in advance to take away the urgency as well. The craving could be just wanting to tick off all those points, working towards you creating a better plan. The response then is to maybe spend an hour of putting those actions or those ideas into a business plan, and the reward, that's when you can grab a coffee and sit back and scroll through the social media and emails. So we need a mindset that reflects our identity of who we need to be to control our time. And only you can adjust your behavior. If you want to reclaim some of your time, you've got to do something different. In our last session, for those of you who joined us, you would have heard me say, it wasn't me, it was actually someone a very long time ago saying, if you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. So that's the second mindset. The next mindset is again created by Stephen Covey. And if you haven't read or listened to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, please do it. In a nutshell, this matrix reflects that we all live in a time-pressured world with multiple and overlapping commitments. And I think I've come to the realization that urgency is no longer reserved for special occasions. It's around most of the time now. So separating the tasks that you've got or that come across your desk or across your workplace into these 4 quadrants will help you better manage that flood of responsibilities and be able to do better work and maintain a positive frame of mind. And it directly ties back into that third habit of highly effective people being put first things first. Now, hopefully you can see on the screen there that we need to spend less time working in those urgent quadrants on the left-hand side. And we need to spend more time working in, say, quadrant 2, which is a quadrant of quality. That's where we do our planning and our prevention and our innovation. And it's where we improve our processes and where we're most productive, to be honest, because we've taken the urgency out of it. It's really important, but it's not urgent. We can spend some quality time on it without distractions. So we need to assess each of the things we're doing on a daily basis that are not important, they're distracting us from working in this quadrant of quality. What disruptions can we minimize or eliminate? What strategies can you use to reclaim some of that time that you're spending on non-important things? And we often get people to do a time diary just for the day of the activities they do so they can allocate each of those tasks into those 4 quadrants. It helps and it assists in answering those questions I just posed. So they're the mindsets that really are really important for you to understand, because for there to be change, I must change. There's an old saying. So you need to look at your mindsets before we get into now some tips about and strategies about that may assist you in reclaiming some of your time. And Tim and I are going to run through those now. Now, the first one, it's basically called productivity pyramid. And to reclaim some of your time, you use it this way. It looks at your time versus your return on invested time. So yeah, there's 5 stages of this pyramid. The first stage is improve. So this is where you can work on mastering or your expertise, the thing that you're really good at, why you went into business in the first place, and getting better at what you do. The second stage is to increase, where you can get more people to do what you're doing. That can be done by delegating or outsourcing. And that could be not only just to employees, because you might not have a team, but you can outsource to contractors as well. The third stage is where we invest. Where can you invest in technology to scale your business? Next, we can then look at what can we do to invent? Can we invent our own systems or technology to scale the business? It could be a valuable IP or even an app. And then finally, innovate, which in its simplest form is working on better things. So where are you on the productivity pyramid? Could you free up some time by employing others or contracting out some work? What systems or software solutions could you utilize to free up some of your time to allow you to work in that non-urgent, important quadrant? Improved systemization not only frees up your time, but it allows you to grow that business without increasing your risk or the workload on you. And Tim will talk about increasing and scaling your business without blowing up. That's the productivity period. Are there other things that you could be working on to derive a better return on your time? Now, unfortunately, COVID-19 has forced many of us to think about how we can adapt, innovate, re-engineer. I said unfortunately, sometimes it's fortunate, but we're happy to discuss how this productivity pyramid can work to your advantage. There's often a set of fresh eyes looking over your unique situation can open up the opportunities. So that's the first strategy. Tim, I'll let you take away the second strategy there.
Yeah, the second strategy can be very confronting, and it's stopping working with the wrong people. It's really hard to say no, because you're running a business. How do you say, no, I don't want to do business with someone? How do you say, no, I don't want that income? It's really, really difficult. But if we're talking about time here, let's talk about what that impact it has on you and your business. So it might be a customer, it could be a supplier, it could be actually someone within your business, someone from outside of your business. It doesn't matter who it is, it's someone who you just know in your heart of hearts you shouldn't be working with that person. And perhaps you can look at issues like people who don't pay your bills on time, people who treat your team badly. Now imagine that, people who treat your team poorly, and then you actively choose to say to your team, no, I value you over the person who's treating you poorly. I'm going to invest time in you. What about those who don't live into your core values? I mentioned at the start, balance. That's a really important value for our business, but we also have other values. Honesty and integrity are 2 of them. Recently, we've had some situations where we've had to deal with some integrity. It was some ugly phone calls to make. But if we don't have integrity, how can we ask the people around us to have that integrity? And maybe some people around you don't have the same values as you have. In life, it's hard to work with people who have the value misalignment. And just unreliability, that's frustrating. No one's perfect. We all make mistakes. But consistent unreliability just is a drain on your time. So maybe you've got to make a brave and bold decision from time to time. Maybe you've got to decide, who am I going to free up some time for? And how can I spend some time with my better customers or clients? And your team, they'll thank you. They'll definitely thank you. Imagine instead of spending some time in hospitality with the complaining customers, spending some time on training up your team or having a team function or event. It's so much more enjoyable. But if you think back through the previous slide, maybe you could even innovate. I know in hospitality, one of the challenges you've got coming up now is dealing with QR coding and vaccinations and what you can and can't do. What tech can you use to support the team? How can you innovate to make it as efficient as possible? It's going to be a challenge, and we're trying to find ways to make the most of that time. And what I'm going to do is give you a little challenge right now, just before I go back to Michael with strategy 3. If you've got a pen and paper, write down the name of one person who you're currently working with and see if you're brave enough to make a decision to stop working with that person. There'll be someone in your mind that's just jumped out and go, I can't stand working with that person. All they do is take away my good energy. They make it hard on people. I don't know why we deal with them. Let's just see what that would look like. Just play it out. What would it look like if you chose, and that's the point is you choose to not work with that person. So that strategy is really, really powerful, but it's also feeds into the main strategies, which I'll flick over to you, Michael, for the next one.
Thanks, Tim. Look, strategy 3, meetings, they are the bane of a lot of people. And I get that depending on your business, some of you will run more meetings than others, but there is great value in having regular meetings if they're done well. So whether they're the 10-minute toolbox meetings over coffee or meetings with prospective customers or workflow meetings, ensure that they're efficient and valuable to everyone attending. Now, poorly planned meetings are a consistent top 10 time waster that gets reported on. So in essence, here are a couple of rules to running effective meetings. Absolute must, set a time limit and stick to it. If it's a toolbox meeting, make sure it's no more than 10 minutes. If it's a monthly team meeting, set it at, say, 45 minutes. Check at the time as you're going through it and remind everyone of the time agreed if it looks like that meeting might drag over time. Reports prior to a meeting, really effective in reducing and increasing the effectiveness of meetings. Consider using a team member report that they send in to you prior to the meetings about the challenges they've had and the support they need and what they've got planned for the upcoming week. This will increase the efficiency of the meetings dramatically. Set a regular rhythm for team meetings. Example, pre-COVID, when we were in the office, we had one every morning for no more than 5 minutes. It was just a daily huddle, and having these meetings meant that our team were fully informed and we're not repeating ourselves to most of the team members. It's also providing a bit of a forum for feedback as well. Yep. Another point, clear purposes and agendas. Make sure that each meeting has one. It encourages the attendee to prepare and minimise the risk that the meeting goes off on a tangent. Make sure that you come out of meetings with actions and not just having lengthy discussions. Now, this is aided, I suppose, if you can get the team member reports prior to the meeting, because you can keep on track. If there needs to be more detailed discussion, set another time. And accountability, this is the check-in on the actions that were recorded from prior meetings. You need accountability there. Having the regular follow-up rhythm meetings make sure that tasks get done. So how well do your meetings stack up, and could you improve them at all? Something to think about. Tim, next strategy, please.
Yeah, and this is the 10 Hats org review, and the meetings actually is critical in this sense too. If you're looking to scale your business without, and Michael mentioned before about not blowing up, this is the methodology that we would strongly recommend if you're looking to scale your business without blowing yourself and your business up. And it's a 10 Hats org review. And it's challenging because sometimes you have to actually admit that you're not the person for certain roles in your business. So let's have a look at that. It's the 10 departments in your business. And the 10 Hats is an essential mindset really for business structure, leadership, and management. What it does is it defines the roles in your business that are operational against those that are strategic. But it also helps you draw accountability lines to allow for better planning, reporting, delegation, time management. Classic one today, we're talking about time management. But it also really identifies where you can find resourcing gaps. which is important because if you want to scale the business, if you want sustainable, ultimately for some businesses, particularly in retail hospitality, you're looking to sell them at some stage. The stronger the structure, the more saleable the business is. So 10 hats reflects the 10 departments that exist in any business. Now, this is big or small, and every department needs one leader. But I want to make a really, really important point here. Responsibility and doing are not the same. So there's a leader. The leader may delegate work. Michael will talk about that shortly. But ultimately, they're the final decision makers. They're the leader. It doesn't mean that they are doing everything. So how can we manage that? How many hats are you currently wearing in your business? If you look through there, for most people in small business, you're wearing probably all of them, or at least you're wearing 6 or 8 out of the 10. And maybe you should consider removing one of them to free up your capacity to work more on important things. So it's hard to manage 10 hats at once. Doing a 10 hats org review will analyze the hats you're wearing and see what you're wearing well and what you're wearing poorly. Perhaps it's not your natural strength. I know when we do our review of our 10 hats org review, and I mentioned it's confronting in the sense that you realise that, well, for me, I realised that I was really holding our business back by wearing certain hats. I had to let go if the business was going to grow. And that was really critical. But the realisation came through this process about seeing what is a responsibility in each of these hats, where my strengths lie, and what it actually did was free me up to put my strengths into a different area. Now, if you're in a small business, you will wear multiple hats. But it's about how you can manage those hats on your way through. And when you look at the benefits of a 10 hats org review, it's really around these points about a clarity of individual roles and how they work together. So the bigger your business, the more you're going to need people to work together. Everyone's going to have their role. That's how the great teams operate, whether they be sporting teams, work teams, whatever. They always work together, but they know their role. Improving delegation is a really big one, and personal development of your team members. So when I was sort of realised, combination of both, that I wasn't suited to certain hats, what it actually did was allowed other team members to step into the role that I'd been, and they're far exceeding what I was ever doing in those roles. They're far, far better. So it allows for their personal development, gives really clear accountability lines. You could see in the structure there before, there's CEO, mentioned before at the start of this session. Michael's the CEO of our business. Each leader of each hat reports to the CEO. The CEO reports to the directors, and that's how the strategy works. So very, very clear accountability lines. It can actually identify resourcing gaps and outsourcing opportunities, which I'll touch on in a moment. And it also allows you to scale your business, as mentioned, without blowing it apart. Because if we want to grow a business, one thing we don't want to do is grow broke. Let's grow a business in a way that won't blow us apart. Now, the reality is it's not easy, and there's external challenges, and we don't have an endless pot of money. But what we can try to do, hopefully, is make the most of the use of the time that we do have available to us. So just some examples of what's out there of contracting out or outsourcing to help you reclaim your time. And these, when I say this, if you identify your own ability that that's not really my cup of tea, outsourcing is an option. If it is your cup of tea, we'll find a way to outsource something else so you can spend more time on that hat. So, for example, marketing is an obvious one. Now, very, very few small businesses that we're dealing with on the line here today would actually have the capability or capacity to be able to have a full-time marketing manager. So if it's not your thing, look to outsource it. Alternatively, if it is your thing, well then there's some other options you could outsource to spend more time being really effective at your marketing. So think through that option. Now, things like maintaining websites, emails, social media campaigns, particularly, and in this dynamic time at the moment, social media and hospitality is critical because your messaging is changing sometimes on an hourly basis, not even daily at the moment. Finance, what's one close to our heart, but it's another common hat to outsource, and many businesses do outsource their finance. Why would you sit there at the middle of the night trying to do your best statement? Why are you trying to go through every entry on Zero? You might be using that, for example. Why are you trying to actually work out some cash flow forecasts? Well, yeah, it's important you get involved in that, but maybe you can use some outsourcing support to help you look forward. HR, the bane of everyone is HR. Most of us know that we're probably doing it wrong, but we're doing our best. And maybe it's an opportunity to look at HR experts to support and help us through our business. IT, admin, there's 2 other hats. So just there's 5 hats we've gone through: marketing, finance, HR, IT, and admin. They're areas where outsourcing could minimize your risk and saves you time and money, which is what we're after here. So the 10 org review really can open up some big, it's just some big opportunities in your business to have the business that you want to have. I'll forgo to you, Michael, for the last one.
Definitely. So if you've decided that, to free up some of your time so that you can work on the non-urgent but the important things, you may have to delegate. But there are many misconceptions around delegation, and delegation is a skill that should be mastered. It's not flinging a task at someone hoping they do it right. Honestly, how many times have you given someone a task but ended up saying to yourself, I should have just done it myself? Well, maybe, just maybe, it was a way in which you delegated it, possibly. Effective delegation requires communication. First, you must assess the task, and delegate it to the right person is important. Whilst picking the right person is important, so is providing clear support as they learn how to complete this new task. You've got to communicate the parameters, both verbally and maybe in an email or written procedure, because people learn differently. But you've got to ask your team member to repeat back to you the instructions that you just gave to ensure nothing's lost in translation, and set a clear deadline for completion. Articulating the objectives of the project could help as well, because the team member will then, or contractor, will have a better understanding of your expectations. Most importantly, set some time to review the outcomes together, because let's be honest, it's unlikely they're going to get it right the first time. Having said that, and also don't be surprised or offended if, with their fresh perspective, they find a more efficient way of achieving your desired outcome. This is often a happy byproduct of delegation, along with potentially improved trust and respect and communication and productivity, which ultimately, of course, should lead to improved profit and happiness for you. So many people confuse delegation with abdication. Essentially, abdication is where you're setting your team member up to fail, or your contractor, or your outsourcing body. Ultimately, that damages culture. And just as I said before, the benefits of better communication, it's going to impair communication and productivity. So really important to know the difference between delegation and abdication. So, what are you going to do? Here's a question for you. What are you going to do with the time that you freed up? Please, take the time to write down what you would do, so you don't waste it. You don't just, the time doesn't get buried in by some other non-urgent or non-important task. Write it down. But while you're thinking about it, here's 5 things that maybe you could think about doing. Commit to teaching others what you've learned. Teach it forward, further consolidating your knowledge by teaching it. It's so important. Spending your time sharpening the saw, getting better at what you do, getting more efficient. You could perhaps plan more effectively, make a better plan, make it more commercial. Is it in alignment with what your goals are. Sometimes plans are made 5 months, 5 years ago. Are they still relevant? Perhaps with the time you free up, you can create better habits. Perhaps, and here's another thought, maybe just take time for yourself. Look after your health and well-being. Because, yeah, at times we can all feel the water rising around us, especially, for some businesses at the moment. The stress and the pressure and lack of time can damage our ability to maintain perspective on what really matters, both this is in the workplace and at home. There's a phrase that I've heard a lot more recently that, we know we've got to make time for our wellness. Otherwise, we may be forced to make time for our illness. Hope that doesn't happen. So it's really important. Maybe instead of trying to fit our me time activities or things that are important to me in amongst our work commitments, we flip that on its head a little bit and go, you know what? I'm going to embed those non-negotiable things for me into the schedule and fit the work stuff around it. Never know. There's a lot of evidence that we do this. We actually end up being a bit more productive because we're happier and have happier mind set in the first place. Just a thought. So you've heard a lot from us today. So what are your next steps from here? Please assess where your time is being underutilized. This will help you become more conscious of your daily choices. Maybe do that task monitoring for a day and see where the tasks that you could actually take on that could impact and increase your capacity. Get clear on the habits that you wish to create, the ones will improve your productivity and focus. Now, planning for this sustainable, improvement starts with you as the leader in your business. I'd love you to identify 3 most important actions that you're going to do from today's session. Please don't put it aside and go, oh, yeah, there's a bit there I could probably take on board. Please write it down. I'd love to hear. If you want to send them to Tim or myself as well, love to hear what you intend to do. 3 most important actions. Focus on what you can do now and stop worrying about what is out of your control. I know it's easy to say, but gee, it really helps if you can master that. And finally, get some support from someone. Being in business can be quite lonely. So it doesn't matter who it is. It does matter who it is. Make sure that there's someone that you respect and trust and has been there and done that. If you've got someone to talk to, fantastic. If you want to talk to us, we're here to help you as well. So based on feedback, we are here to help, and we've had some feedback before about, can you give us some indications? I generally don't like putting prices up there for things that we can offer because it does vary a little bit depending on your needs. But you know what? The feedback was that you wanted an indication, so here it is. We can help you in lots of different ways. We can do that 10 hats org review for you to free up your time to make sure you get everyone in your team aware of their roles and responsibilities to make sure that you've got the right people wearing the right hats. Now, there's an indicative price there. There's performance coaching, call it accountability coaching, call it just making sure you get stuff done, call it whatever you like. But, again, that's an idea of what it would entail for us to work with you in that area. If you want to, even just a copy of the achievement matrix, or even Orbed or any of the other charts that we've shown you, just drop us a line and we'll send you those for free. And you know what? You've made the time to come and have a listen to us. We'll make the time to listen to you. If you want a complimentary meeting for, 20 minutes, half an hour, just about your business and what is possible and what things are concerning you, where you need some assistance, you've made the time for us. Again, we'll make the time for you so you can talk to us about that. So that's how we can help you. I don't think there's been any questions come through, so we'll move on to what I can see. Just our parting thought from Yoda. where Yoda says, no, try not, do or do not. There is no try. So based on that, please, as you're reading that, make a simple plan today. Define at least those 3 actions you'll take as a result of today's webinar. Most importantly, write them down. And if they're personal actions, I give someone the task of holding you to account. So that's it from us. Thank you to Tim for setting this up and getting it organised, and thank you for everyone else who's taken the time to come along and listen to us.
Awesome. So thank you, Michael, for that. I know you put a lot of effort into bringing all this together. As we say, we don't do everything right. We, one step forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, half a step back, but it's all about progress. And I did actually get one question was texted to me during the session, which just said, where do we even start? There's so much to do. My answer to that is really simple. Just start. Just take 1 step, whatever that step is. It may be the simplest thing to do. It may seem like nothing, but 1 step forward. If you think through when you learned to go right back to when we were a baby and we learned to walk, the first that we went running day 1, where we just had to slowly start. So just do something is a thing from today. Please do that. So with all that said, thank you, Michael, for your time, but thank you to everyone who's joined us today. It's really important to us that we try to serve our community. This is one way we can do it. And we're hoping that as much as, yes, accountants are built around money and all that sort of stuff, that's the stereotypical look, what we want to talk about is balance, and time is a critical piece of that balance. So time, please grab hold of your time. One thing about time is you'll never get it back. This is not a dress rehearsal, this life we're running. This is the real deal. So let's make the most of that time. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day and find some time. And we'd love to hear from you feedback on what works for you to actually help grow your business from what we've said today. So thank you very much.